Wow, look at all the pretty faces in the chat. That is correct, everybody. Thank you for joining us on tonight's edition of Scarif Live here on the Red 5 Network. Let's see who's in the chat. You guys have been starting without me. This is fantastic. I want to say hello to everybody in the chat. We had Skywalker Academy early on, even before we started doing a little dialogue with himself. And I responded. That was fantastic. DJ is in the chat. Andrew is in the chat. They gone. Vader, thank you for joining us. Rural Farm Boy, what is up, my friend? Did I say Andrew? Andrew, thank you again. That's our Andrew number 2, because not to be confused with Andrew number 1, of course, on Radio Underground. Yes, sirree. We have Star Wars Steve. Hey, what is up? Let's go down here because we really have quite a group. Ubaldo, how are you doing, sir? Thank you for joining us. Let's see. DJ, I hope you're resting, man. If you missed it tonight, you get a pass. But Solo Girl is here. What is happening? We got a lot of really wonderful people in the chat. We are going to be talking about the Ahsoka show, namely episode numero 5 here on the Red 5 Network and Scarif Live. Joining us, we've got some amazing people. We've got Ambrose from the Geek News Network. We've got Collin and Carter from Star Wars. What are they called? What did I put on the thing? But everybody will be out in a second. We got a lot to talk about. I got some notes. I got pages and pages of notes. Star Wars Station, thank you very much. I've got pages and pages of notes, and I'm sure that you guys have some thoughts as well. My guest, the panel, our illustrious panel here, have some thoughts as well. So we're gonna say hello to them after we push a couple of buttons. I got to get a quick little drink, but and then we got some breaking news here right now as we are broadcasting live. Wow, I didn't see this coming. We'll talk about this right after this. Kathleen Kennedy gets fired. What?
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Welcome, my friends, to the Scuttlebutt podcast. Let's do some cleaning up here. I'm going to put Collin and Carter up here because they go together.
I like it up here. I like it.
Yeah,
I like being up on top.
How you guys? How's everybody?
Really well.
Really good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, hanging in there, man. Ready
Absolutely.
to talk some Ahsoka episode 5.
Yes, sirree. And there's some wonderful people in the chat. We got a great crowd. And usually when we get together here on the Scarif podcast, the chat is its own show. So we'll pay attention to the chat. And if you're finding us for the first time, thank you very much for joining us. Saturday nights, we do Scarif Live. Lately, it's been obviously Ahsoka talk. We do a discussion, a breakdown, some deep dive thoughts and comments on the show. Do you like it? Do you hate it? What's going on with your bad self? And we'll see what happens. But Scarif Live, Saturday night, 7 Central, 8 Eastern. Math is hard. But we definitely having a good time here. If you're enjoying the show, please give us a thumbs up, as that ticker tape tells us to do. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe. We have a new subscriber tonight, Semper Fi Danny. Thank you very much. She's got a question that she posted online a couple of minutes ago. I will ask that later on. And would love to get your 2 cents on that. So that would be great. I'm going to go around the room and say hello there to my new friends, Carter and Collin. What are you guys doing?
Man, we're excited to be on Scarif Podcast. This is like Collin and I's maybe first real live show. We've done a couple live streams over on our station, but this is like our first show that we're doing live. So we're excited about it.
Excellent.
Yeah,
excellent.
very exciting.
Welcome. So let me before I get to Ambrose, I want to ask you guys because I've been listening to your show and we'll talk about it in a second. What describe your show? Give us your elevator pitch for those of us that are those of you in the chat that are not familiar.
So we're real big Star Wars canon junkies. I mean, we read everything we can, we listen to everything we can, we watch everything we can, and so we're always talking about the latest in Star Wars, whether it's comics, books, TV. I mean, we try to keep up with the most topical. So we're covering Ahsoka right now, but we're always throwing out anything we can along the continually shifting Star Wars universe. And that's kind of where our niche is. But we've got segments all over our podcast where we answer audience questions. We talk to people on our Patreon. We have a news segment, all kinds of stuff on there.
Excellent.
Yeah, we talked about Star Wars forever. You know, went to all the movies, watching every show that came out, and Carter's like, well, let's just do a podcast.
Yeah, we were having hours long phone calls together, so why not record them?
Absolutely.
Now we have 2-hour shows. So it's
yeah.
really good. It's well worth it.
That's the fun thing about kind of geeking out. We do it obviously all the time, especially nowadays we got these microphones and cameras in front of us. So why not share our thoughts with other like-minded folks, and maybe get into some internet arguments on Twitter once in a while? But it's all good. It's all in good fun, right? Right, Ambrose.
I don't know. Is Clint Eastwood in the chat?
I don't know. He might be. So you got to watch yourself, man.
Okay. Yeah. That was wild.
That was wild. But, Ambrose, good to have you back. I know you've been on the show a couple times, but you got another slot, my friend.
Yeah, always a pleasure to be here. Always, whenever you have room, I'm always game to come on. You're a popular guy nowadays, so I know I can't be on every week, but anytime you have a slot, I love making an appearance. So thanks for having me on tonight.
Absolutely. And this is going to be, I feel like this is really going to be a great discussion. I want to go around the room and kind of get everybody's quick little take, measure the room temperature as far as, your thoughts on Ahsoka as a show in general. I know, Star Wars on the small screen for me, if anybody in the chat has seen the show or listened to some of our reviews, I feel like for me, Star Wars on the small screen has been very hit or miss. I know there's a lot of folks that really enjoy everything Star Wars. I'm not one of those guys. I'm not going to break down and critique and tell folks, but I want to get your guys' take as far as Ahsoka specifically. What is kind of like your 1 or 2 sentence take on the show in general? Carter, let's start with you.
Yeah, 1 or 2 sentences. I think it's probably like Rebels season 5. I see a lot of people complaining about why wasn't this just animated, and I'm happy that it came to live action. I'm enjoying the show, and mainly I'm enjoying the show because I get real deep into all the Force mysticism stuff. Like that's what I care about. And so this last episode was perfect for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Collin, what about you?
Yeah, the Ahsoka show, I maybe kind of start off a little slow, but especially after this episode, it really hit home for me with Hayden being in there.
Oh, yeah.
And I've just been playing those scenes over and over and over. The part where he twirls the lightsaber behind his back. I'm just like replaying it. It hits home for me, so for some reason.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about that specifically. I've got some notes here, but Ambrose, I know you were on. I think it was we were talking about episode 3, maybe. I think with Danny.
I believe so. Yeah. That was.
Like that.
Is that the one where she dressed up like Ahsoka?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I was on that.
So, general thoughts, Ahsoka so far.
Okay, episodes 1 and 2 started off really slow, and I wasn't a fan of the interpretation of the character by Rosario Dawson. but the last 2 episodes have made them make sense. So I'm all in with this season now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also have seen the take about Ahsoka being, Rebels 2.0 or whatever. But yeah, I don't mind it. I mean, did anybody think it was going to be any different? I don't think so. I mean, we've got Ahsoka, we've got some of obviously all the characters in the animated shows. The one thing that I was going to be worried about, going into it was I didn't want them to water down the story and have to explain it to the normies, to the casual fans that maybe, had no idea that this was an animated show first. I feel like they've done actually a pretty good job with kind of peppering in little tidbits of information that you can kind of get enough for the casual fans to kind of, fill in the blanks without going overboard with exposition. There's 1 or 2 lines, even in this episode, I think Jason says, "Oh, the whales, it's like the stories you used to tell us where, Ezra and the bad guys were taken away." So I think those lines are a perfect example of how I think this show is doing fairly well with, kind of giving casual fans a taste of what us uber nerds really, know for a fact and really have seen all of the animated shows. Do you guys agree with that statement?
Yeah, I really do. It's you hit the nail on the head. And I mean, you got all these other details of like new characters, even for new people, like Hu Yang. He's not a new character per se, but we're getting more of Hu Yang than we ever had or dreamed of.
Right.
So like there's lots of meat for the casual people too. And but you peel back the layers a little bit and there's it turtles all the way down.
Yeah.
I feel like they've essentially got these 2 perfect characters in Jason and Hu Yang, allowing them to give a bunch of exposition because one is a child, the other one's 25,000 years old. And the perfect example is when Carson Teva's asking him what's going on? Why are we listening to this little kid? And he says, "Oh, his dad was a Jedi, and Kanan Jarrus." He might as well have just held up a Rebels DVD and handed it to him and said, "Here you go watch the last season of Rebels and you'll understand." But it's enough for the casual fans. I mean, my wife's a casual fan and she's following along pretty much 1 for 1.
Yeah.
I'm liking the storytelling. I've always said in episodes 4 through 6, George Lucas was a master at telling a story without telling a story. Like he'd drop little hints so you could figure things out and fill in the gaps on your own. And that's kind of what Filoni's doing. It starts to get a little, he beats you over the head with the plot, but it's not too bad. Like you do have to explain some things, but it's definitely better storytelling than there's been. And one more thing, how can you be disappointed in it being Rebels season 5 when Dave Filoni literally said this is Rebels season 5?
Oh, sure. I'm not disappointed in that.
No, but I mean, the people complain, this is nothing but Rebels season 5. That's what he said.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this episode was called Shadow Warrior, episode 5. And Star Wars Station, I was listening to you guys talk about this episode in particular. I just finished up that show yesterday. You guys started talking about the title and how you guys felt like the title wasn't perfectly appropriate for what was going on. And I wanted to get a recap from you guys to fill in our audience. And if you haven't subscribed to them or go find them on the socials, go find their podcasts and listen to them. Real good stuff. But I wanted to get your quick recap on what you thought or why you thought the title wasn't good. Cause I've got I really went into the name of the title and I wanted to give my 2 cents. And I just wanted to talk to you guys about that.
So I think I was the one who was more leveling the criticism. Collin had a pretty good point later in our episode about it, but at the beginning, and still my feeling is Dave's had some absolutely top tier titles. We got the title of the last episode, Fallen Jedi, applies literally and figuratively to multiple characters. We have Jedi Knight, the episode in Rebels where Kanan dies. That was a perfectly titled episode. We've gotten some really good episode titles over and over from Dave, and this one just didn't really have much meaning to me. It was too ambiguous, and Shadow Warrior doesn't really mean anything in general. So I was a little disappointed in the title, but maybe you'll change my mind now.
Yeah, Carter and I had a good discussion on it, and I thought I won him over actually, but to me, it was obviously Ahsoka. You know, she's wearing gray the whole time. When she comes out of the water, she's wearing white, and she basically has a cloud over her up until that point. And that's what Anakin's whole lesson was to step out of the shadows.
Okay. All right. All right. Ambrose, you got any take on the title before I spout out my wisdom?
Actually, this is the first I'm hearing the title, because when I pulled it up on Disney Plus, it just said Part 5.
Okay.
On mine anyway. So
they do that
yeah.
specifically. So you have to the title hits you in the face.
Yeah, they do say title 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have to go into the show to actually see the title. Is that correct?
I must have been like looking down for a minute when the title came on, because I didn't know what the title was.
All right. A quick announcement. Comics and Cosmetics. Danny has arrived. Thank you for showing up, Danny. Thank you so much. Hold on a second.
I'm liking what Solo Girl said in the chat. She was a shadow of herself.
Girl. Yes, absolutely.
Which explains why we didn't like the interpretation of the character for the first 3 episodes.
I totally agree with you. It was so clear she was so dour on purpose, and a bunch of people used to defend that demeanor. But, it's identical to Ahsoka in the Clone Wars and Rebels, and it totally wasn't. And now it's canon that it wasn't the same thing. That now has way more charm, and that's canon. She was in a bad mood. She was grumpy.
Grumpy Jedi. I've heard this story before. Yeah, so you guys know of George Lucas's love for Akira Kurosawa. He's got a movie called Shadow Warrior, and it's in Japanese it's Kagemusha. The title of the show, when a warlord, this is a description of that movie. When a warlord dies, a peasant thief is called upon to impersonate him, then finds himself haunted by the warlord's spirit as well as his own fears. I wanted to pose this question to you guys and the chat. Could this dead warrior be Anakin and the peasant be Ahsoka, being haunted by the warlord's spirit, trying to sort out Ahsoka's fears? And what are Ahsoka's fears? We know that obviously Lucas and Filoni worked very closely together to develop the Ahsoka character back in the Clone Wars days. And Lucas's love for Kurosawa films is well known. But I was doing a little research, and I was just finding the I was watching the that little behind the scenes. It's a 7-minute little vignette on Disney Plus on the Ahsoka show, and Dave Filoni basically, he makes a reference to Shadow Warrior, and even before this episode, he was talking about a Shadow Warrior when he was directing the Ahsoka, the Jedi episode from Book of Boba Fett. So he already had that name in his head. And I'm thinking, what you guys thought of that regarding the description of the title and how it refers to her being, someone that is, being haunted by a dead warlord. In this case, my interpretation it could be Anakin, and her kind of expressing her fears about all that. Thoughts from the gallery?
I mean, I think I don't think it's fear so much as it is regret and guilt, because up until this episode, she has been defined by her walking away. Like, she walked away from Anakin, she walked away from Sabine, and that's pretty much become what she's known for. And I think it's guilt and regret more than it is fear. And I think the guilt haunts her, because she thinks that if she didn't walk away from Anakin, she might have been able to stop him from turning, which isn't the case. I think she just would have died. But I mean, that's an argument for another day.
I think you mentioned that warlord spirit, and I definitely see the argument that it's Anakin. And I also think it could just be Ahsoka's lifetime in battle. That's something she talked about in the episode, and that was plaguing her the whole episode. She was thrust into the Clone Wars. She never got to experience the idyllic Jedi Order that everybody, even Anakin, got to experience for at least a few years. And since that point, she had done nothing but fight. And so it could be her own warlord spirit that is also pulling her down.
Yeah.
Before Carter talks, what's the name of the show on Monday? Extra Star Wars? He brought up an interesting point that the world between worlds can be like a Harry Potter style room of requirement, and it could be what you need at that particular time when you go in, and that does kind of make sense now that she saw that, and that was her vision quest,
and that's what she needed. I'm not too familiar with the Harry Potter world. I know Sean is over at Extra Star Wars, but yeah, that's a good explanation as any.
So as far as Ahsoka's fears, what they are, Hu Yang said it and Balin Skull said it. What Hu Yang say exactly? They've had a unique line of Jedi. What to start with? You got Yoda, you got Qui-Gon. Carter could do this better than me. He rattled off really fast. No, Yoda, Count Dooku, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Anakin, to Ahsoka, right? And then, look at all this legacy these guys have, and especially what her main fear is. It's that scene we saw where Anakin's eyes are lit up red and Ahsoka's eyes are lit up red. She's worried that the legacy of death that Balin Skull accuses her of having is going to be like some sort of path to the dark side or something. Some sort of like being a fallen Jedi, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I want to get more into the discussion that Anakin and Ahsoka had during those dream sequences there. But real fast, earlier today, I had tweeted out, if anybody can guess which Red 5 Pod t-shirt I was going to be wearing tonight, that I would send that person some Scarif stickers. I know Charlie DJ from Exegesis said that I might be wearing the Coruscant Radio Underground t-shirt. Sorry, DJ, that was incorrect. Andrew said the Used and Abused podcast t-shirt. Sorry, Andrew, that was also incorrect. And obviously, I'm wearing the WSTR Galactic Public Access t-shirt. So nobody gets a sticker. But anyways, thank you guys for indulging my little Q&A there. I was really impressed, and I think I've watched that episode 3 times, but I was very impressed at the use of the volume during those sequences. And I know I've had my issues with the technology. I think our eyes got used to the trickery pretty fast. But I think in this case, World Between Worlds, the Clone Wars sequences, and I think that was the first battle was Ryloth. But I was very impressed at the usage of the technology in this case, because it really kind of lended itself to being kind of a dream sequence, kind of an ethereal, smoky environment. What did you guys think of the I guess the mechanics of that scene? Did it go with your feeling on those sequences?
I was pretty disappointed that they didn't shoot the World Between Worlds on location, but I'm going to get over that one. I thought that the scenes looked good, and that the haze added to the vision. But I really do have a question in my mind if the haze was always the goal, or if the haze was a result of budget constrictions and it lent itself to the vision as a byproduct. And I'm not saying that either one of those is really an issue, because they spent their budget on plenty of other places that are way better. I mean, getting Hayden Christensen alone, I'm sure that cost an arm and a leg, but I was curious.
And de-aging him.
And de-aging him. Yeah, half the budget right there is just reducing that age for that entire sequence. And we're probably going to get some more of Hayden in the rest of the show. So they probably spent a pretty penny on that.
Sure.
I think that I liked it because honestly, a lot of people were complaining about the volume, but I mean, it was a war sequence. Wars are loud, wars are smoky. You know, it's not like you just like walk in and you're like, it's the Clone Wars, and it's like, do 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 do. Look at my flashback. That's when I killed a guy.
Right.
Like, it was gritty. It was loud, and it did everything it was supposed to do. I mean, the effects did their job. That's my opinion on it.
Sure. Yeah. Collin?
Yeah, I love seeing the clone troopers. I love seeing the costumes. I think all the effort they put in, like the hairstyles Anakin had, the actress, I'm sorry, I don't know her name, using her again as another Rosario Dawson.
She was in Barbie. I believe her name is Ariana Greenblatt.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's okay.
But yeah, I don't know, just it made me feel like in the moment really well.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, Semper Fi, Danny's got a point there. The smoke used to emphasize that it's kind of a memory. I kind of like that ethereal look. I mean, they were isolated really in this battlefield. It was just them two for the most part. You see some Clone War troopers kind of running back and forth, but it's very subtle. And then there are shots where the camera kind of pulls out and you still see them in the foreground, but then you start seeing the walkers in the background kind of lumbering over, and the battle starts to kind of fill the frame in. But we are reminded obviously that these scenes are not about the Clone Wars per se. It's about that internal discussion that Ahsoka and Anakin are having. They were beautiful. I really enjoyed when Anakin and young Ahsoka were on screen. Their dialogue, their conversation was like I hung on every word. I think it was important for us to kind of absorb what is being said between the two characters. And I think it was beautifully done. Obviously, we get to see glimpses of Vader. Those little flash edits were fantastic. And obviously, if you know anything about me, I think Boss is right behind me here. But yeah, Vader's a wonderful character for me. Anytime I get to see him on screen, I love it. I'm going to ask you the question that Danny had on Twitter. She says, do we need or want a Darth Vader series now that we have Anakin back, now that we get a little more Vader on the small screen? What do you guys think? And thank you, Semper Fi Danny, for that question. I really did want to answer that because obviously my love for Darth Vader. I'll make my comment when I hear you guys. Let's go with Carter.
Man, Collin has a real good thing on this because of the comics. Collin's steeped in some Darth Vader comics, so I won't steal his thunder too much. I don't really think we need a Darth Vader series. I'd like to see Hayden a lot as a Force ghost in this pastime. But the first 6 movies are Darth Vader series. They're about Darth Vader. They're his thing. And so we've got a lot of stories to tell in the galaxy, and I don't know if that's where I want them to put all their resources. Now, that's not to say that I would not fall head over heels for a Vader series, because just the scene in Rogue One alone would make 8 seasons of a Vader series worth it if they just treated it like that, because there's a lot of cool stuff for him left to do. But I think there's other projects I'd prioritize before a Vader series.
Okay. All right. Collin, I heard you had thunder.
Yeah. So, gosh, when that comic book came out, I read every single one. I think there's a few that I need to read again. And Karen Gillian, who wrote that stuff, he did an interview in the back in one of them, and he said it's really hard to write stories where the really cool guy does really cool stuff all the time. And I mean, one that sticks out in my mind is he goes to a planet and there's a lava submarine that goes through lava flows like on Mustafar. It's not a Mustafar, but he cuts into the side with his lightsaber and makes it sink and does. I mean, that's just sequence after sequence after sequence like this. And for me, again, like Carter said, I would eat that up. I would watch every single one. But some of the magic would go away. Me and Carter were sitting front row at that movie theater at that Rogue One scene, and we were pretty much having seizures. It was so cool. And so if you did a Darth Vader series or something like that, following him do a cool guy doing cool things, the magic would just go away.
You know, I would have to agree with you. Obviously, when they announced the Kenobi series and they said that, this was, Kathleen Kennedy said this was going to be the rematch of the century. And I'm like, oh no, I'm a little worried. I just did not want them to water down or overuse Darth Vader, because I didn't want any memory I have of that character kind of tarnished in a way. I didn't want his character watered down. I didn't want them to, I don't want to say ruin, but I was like, okay, Darth Vader had his day. Let him live in my mind the way he lives in my mind. But Kenobi came out and Darth Vader walking down that village, cracking children's necks and killing moms and dads back and forth. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe this is okay.
Yeah, Vader in the Disney era has been pretty metal.
Yeah,
I will say every time they introduce him, he's been pretty wicked.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, but the problem I have with Kenobi is that they knocked a lot of the canon kind of out of sequence. Like that battle between him and Kenobi, like that line is a throwaway line now where he says, when we last met, I was but the learner, and now I am the master. I mean, but you already had a battle like 4 years ago. So I mean, it kind of makes it a floating timeline now. So I don't know how I quite felt about it. I liked Kenobi as a series, I really did. I think the problem with it with the fans was the marketing. I think they marketed it as a Luke Skywalker adventure, and fans didn't like the bait and switch. I think that's why it got a bad reception overall. But the canon stuff kind of gets knocked out of whack a little bit.
I can live with that line still being in A New Hope from a certain point of view, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I don't take that line as Vader was talking about the time that they fought on Mustafar. They could have fought somewhere else. So I'm a little softer on that for a while.
The other line is when Moff. I'm sorry to cut you off. The other line is when Moff Tarkin is like, he must be dead by now, and it's like, really? Because I saw him like 5 years ago, and he's younger than you are.
It's too funny. Yeah,
I'll say though that Kenobi series added some weight to some new dialogue. I mean, it gave some more weight to Leia talking about who, Ben Kenobi, and she knows who that is. I mean, it added some weight to some New Hope dialogue that I don't think we had before.
And it also explains why she named her kid Ben.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you like Kenobi as a series, or perhaps you like it as a movie, there is I just interviewed Kai Patterson. He re-edited the entire series into a 2.5-hour movie. Go check that out on the podcast. We interviewed him a couple of weekends ago on ScarifLive as well. So if that's kind of your cup of tea and you want to find out why he did it and his motivations, talk a little bit about his career as well, his Star Wars story, go check that out somewhere on the interwebs. It exists. But absolutely, I wanted to ask you guys a question. What was the lesson that was being taught here? I know there was a question. Is that all I am, a warrior? But do you think that Ahsoka learned? Or let's backtrack, because I think let me get to my notes here. Is that all I am, a warrior? Anakin is frustrated when Ahsoka says her part in the legacy is death and suffering. Anakin gives her a choice again, but this time it seems like he's talking as Darth Vader. He's a little bit more powerful. His first lightsaber battle seems like he was toying with Ahsoka and then letting her kind of get the upper hand. And it actually kind of reminded me of the battle on Bespin with Luke and Vader. That first part of that lightsaber battle, it seems like Vader was kind of toying with Luke, tricking him into thinking that he's got the upper hand. And then towards the end, Vader comes out swinging and was about to do the deed. I think I see a parallel here where the two characters are doing the same thing. Did you guys notice that at all?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. Then I'm not crazy. But it's really fantastic to see Hayden back, obviously back as Anakin. The lightsaber battle between the two, Anakin and Ahsoka, I think were great. I mean, I like the second one too. It just seems like he was a little bit more powerful. His moves were a little bit more precise and directed. What'd you guys think of the lightsaber battles?
Ahsoka, to my opinion, now is in 3 of the best lightsaber battles in the history of Star Wars. I'm no Jedi from Rebels, and the lightsaber duel with Balin, and now this one. So, yeah,
You don't put the Siege of Mandalore on that list?
I forgot about the Siege of Mandalore.
She's in 4 now.
I mean, you can't.
4, right?
She's in 4 out of the top 5 lightsaber duels. I mean, you still have to put the Darth Maul one from Episode 1 up there. But I think it was. If you're asking what the lesson was, I agree with Solo Girl. For her to move on, I think it was kind of Anakin saying, "I forgive you."
Right.
You walked away, but it's okay. Like none of this was your fault. So I think it was kind of him telling her to just clean the slate and forget about everything that's dragging her down.
And she refuses, for some reason, she refuses to forget about everything that's dragging her down. And that's why Anakin gives her that choice again. He goes, wrong answer. I'll ask you again, do you want to live or die? And then he turns around as Vader. And I think he was, it's almost like he's, egging her on to really see the light and see her life beyond her past. Forget the past, kill it if you have to.
Mm-hmm.
I also think he was kind of warning her and like, hey, if you don't let go, look at me. This is where you're headed.
That's a good point.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think I'll answer your 2 questions together. For the lightsaber fights, I'm really enjoying this series because I feel like the lightsaber fights are so variable. We got the Balin versus Ahsoka fight, which was samurai versus a more European knight sword fight.
Very
that was
much
awesome
so,
to
yeah.
see. We got to see Anakin versus Ahsoka, which is so prequel-esque. And at the end of the day, I love the original trilogy probably the most, but I would never say that the prequels don't have the best lightsaber fights because they just do. And so getting to see that was awesome. And then for the lesson for Ahsoka, I think it's really important to understand this journey of hers in the context of this is her cave on Dagobah. This is her, mirror thing that Rey went through on Octo. This is Ezra dealing with Darth Maul. This is her grappling with her fear, her dark side. Every single Jedi we see on screen has got to go through this struggle. And there was a short story that came out 2 weeks ago written by Mike Chin called Brotherhood in the From a Certain Point of View Return of the Jedi book. And it informs this a lot because the short story is about Anakin becoming a Force ghost and Obi-Wan teaching him how to do it right before he dies. And basically what he's doing is he's wrestling with all of his past choices, all of his past, not thinking that he's worthy, and Obi-Wan explaining to him, we are not the sum of our bad choices. We are not the sum of the secrets we keep from others. We're not the sum of our darkest moments. That's not what makes a person. And Ahsoka had to learn that. She had to learn that the war, that her being Darth Vader's apprentice, that her participating in the original her participating in the rebellion, in all of these conflicts in her life, that is not what Ahsoka is, and that's not all she has to teach Sabine is combat. She has valuable Jedi skills and training to teach Sabine beyond that, and that's something Ahsoka needed to learn.
And it's almost like he's saying, okay, fine, I've got the dark side. Everybody's got a little dark side, but we have to get past that, or we have to grow beyond just what we know now, and and grow into more than what we are now. Is this Collin? Is this Anakin's way of telling Ahsoka to go touch grass?
No, well, I mean, that might be one way to put it. But man, Carter really said it best. I mean, you can boil it down to something really simple. I mean, choose to live, don't choose death. I mean, and that was the final thing she said in that last little clash. But yeah, it's really cool. The whole concept is really phenomenal. And I think the Kayvon Dagobah equalization is Carter came up with that. It really hits the nail on the head of what it is. And then the last thing I want to say about the lightsaber fights is that Balin versus Ahsoka one is just phenomenal. Carter said it's East versus West. You know, she's got the single lightsaber with the slightly curved hilt. It's she's holding it exactly like you would a samurai sword. And I don't know, I was just stuff I've seen. And then the way Balin swings his lightsaber, it's like a gladius or a claymore. It seems like it's got weight to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even that final slash of knocking her off the cliff. I mean, it's almost out of Braveheart or something like that.
Yeah, there was pageantry and there was honor in it. It was an interesting duel.
Yeah, the whole thing is just phenomenal. The way they articulated these scenes and melded them together, the two different styles, and to lead to this lesson that Ahsoka has to learn. It's really cool. I can't wait for the rematch.
Yeah, one of the things that on the first watch, I felt the fight was a little clunky, and I think it's because I don't like when people hold lightsabers like a baseball bat, and that might just be like a thing that people that know me know that I'm not into sports, and I try to I tune it out. So when you're holding a lightsaber with something that I also don't like, it freaks out my mind. But I was watching that episode with my son, and at the end I was asking him, what do you think? And he actually picked up what everybody else is saying regarding the samurai feel to it, the almost the respect between the opponents. And it's interesting that he picked it up. I didn't pick it up until I started reading other people's comments about that specific aspect of the duel. And I'm like, wow, I raised a pretty smart kid.
Yeah, congrats. I wouldn't have picked that up.
Yeah.
I don't know how old your son is, but I wouldn't have picked it up at any age.
Yeah, so that's that's pretty interesting. And I think what us as fans, I mean, we are I guess conditioned to see these lightsaber fights as George Lucas would say, faster and more intense. But I think the lightsaber duels have really grown into I don't want to say kind of like a ballet between the opponents, but when you take a look at a lightsaber fight like the one that Maul and Kenobi had in Rebels, everybody was like clamoring, and it's like, oh my God, that was too short, that sucked. But then when you come and think about it and say, what did each of those moves mean? And you can really read a history of those two characters just by those moves. And if you the animated the final death of Maul by the hands of Obi-Wan Kenobi during that story was I don't know, it rendered grown men speechless. It was something that when you really think about it, it's like, wow, okay, now I get it. I understand when it's explained to me. And when I get out of that, I just want to see a fast lightsaber duel. You have to kind of put yourself in the place of, they can't just be do. They've got to have some meaning. And I think Filoni really kind of understands that.
And can I also say
how
much Obi-Wan Kenobi saved everyone in the Star Wars universe? Because Anakin with all his limbs would be unstoppable. He was just he was stronger than a droid. He would have just mowed everyone down. He was brutal.
You're absolutely right. I thought that the rhyming of that scene, they're a much more advanced age. We see the way that the A New Hope duel goes down on the Death Star. It's almost necessary for Obi-Wan to go through a much slower, much more methodical duel. And the homage that it paid to old samurai movies was worth it alone for me. So I was a big fan of that Rebels duel.
Yeah. And I think, this is where we go back to, George Lucas's love of Akira Kurosawa and the samurai stories that director, movies that he has done. Yeah, I think it's great. Danny, I'm going to put it up here because she was talking about something that I wanted to mention. The music background sound in this series is killing it. I want to say that I think early on in my watch of the Rebels animated show, knowing that Kiner was doing the music for that show, I remember thinking to myself, before anything before any Star Wars was on the small screen, I remember thinking this guy should really make movies, because the music is so amazing in this animated show. Bringing him to the series is a stroke of genius. I mean, it's logical, obviously, but I am so happy that we finally get a rendition of the Force theme during this episode, which for me, I think I posted something earlier in the week. You really don't realize how much emotion is tied to the music of Star Wars. There's a lot of emotion there that the music kind of helps you feel. And one of the things that I feel was missing from all of the Star Wars animated the Star Wars series on Disney Plus was the familiarity to the John Williams themes. And I know we've got some really great music in the Mandalorian with what's his name, Goranson, and some of the other kind of familiar themes, but when it comes to the core musical cues of Star Wars, I think for me there was a lot missing. But I'm glad to have heard the Force theme with Jason as he's reaching out and listening to the lightsaber clashes in the World Between Worlds. What did you guys think of that?
I mean, I liked the scene. I thought it was a little bit. Part of me did think it was a little bit on the nose when he was like, "Mom, listen." I would have liked it better if he just focused on it and kind of just did a subtle like shh. Because it was just a little on the nose, him trying to get Hera to listen. But overall, I liked it. It shows that there's a future for Jason in the franchise, and there's another story to tell. So
sure.
Mm-hmm.
The Kevin Connor stuff, man. Every time I think about that and what's going on, even with this, like going back to Clone Wars, even that intro music and how it rhymes, like Carter likes to say, it really hits home. And even going back to the Bad Batch, the little drum beat, I love that sound. I love hearing that just as soon as the episode starts. And man, it's so good. It really sets the tone.
I think the Kiners really pioneered that in Rebels. Whenever something is happening with the Force, they have that theme, they have that sticking point, they have that sound that kind of clues you in that something big is happening.
Sure.
And I am so happy to finally see that brought to live action Star Wars. I mean, I honestly think that any Star Wars property would be elevated with some of these musical cues, because like you said, our emotions are tied to these sounds. We know and are familiar with John Williams's composition, and we are familiar now with the Kiners composition and Goranson's composition, that all of them adding these elements around big moments have made these series better.
Yeah, completely agree. I think the music has been spot on. I think looking forward to the rest of the series. What do you, there's each Star Wars property sometimes introduces a brand new force power. What do you think of Ahsoka's psychometry when she reads, feelings and stuff like that from leftover items? She gets kind of this information. She's taking a look at the broken map that is left behind, and she feels that Sabine, what she was feeling before that. You guys digging that?
Oh yeah, Cal Kestis needs to come give her a lesson.
Yeah, and I think each Jedi, it's been established, each Jedi has some sort of specialty, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And not every Jedi has, like, there's
the same powers, right?
There's no uniform powers. So I mean, I'm liking it, and I think it falls in line with everything else.
Yeah.
And then another thing, sorry, Carter, is Baylan Skoll being able to read minds. It's straight Jorah Savath, so seeing that kind of equate across from book to the small screen, really cool.
Yeah, I thought Ahsoka's use of psychometry was pretty interesting because it's the first time we've gotten to see it on the screen. You know, like Collin mentioned, it's all over those Jedi games. And it's Quinlan Voss has it in comic books and books, but getting to see it on the screen for the first time, it's a really cool force power. I mean, and it makes a lot of sense beyond some of the other force powers we may have seen before. This one just feels so natural to me. And I'm really, really happy that we finally got it on screen. We also got a lightsaber move in the last episode, Tutu Menace, where they turn off their blade while they're fighting. Marok did that to Ahsoka. And I think that was the first time we saw that on screen too. But it's not even a blink and you'll miss it. It's a slow down to frame rate and you'll see it.
Sure. Yeah. Want to say hello to my friend Cardiac Drop, CJ. I was on his show a while back, and he did our ScarifLive last week. What's up, Cardiac? Yeah, I think it's kind of cool to kind of learn about new force powers. You know, when Star Wars gets freaky with the force, I like that. I think 2 weeks ago, I was reading some Reddit leaks, and some of the things that were in those Reddit leaks came to pass this time around. So if more of those Reddit leaks are going to come to fruition in the future episodes, I think Star Wars is going to get pretty wacky.
Yeah,
good. That's where I'm most at home. I love the weird force stuff.
We're going
but
to another galaxy,
I hope they stick with it. Like in episode 1, when like Anakin and Qui-Gon for one scene, they're like, "We'll get away from them with force speed." And then
that was right. That was the only time they used it.
For like the rest of the trilogy, you're like, use the force speed.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember that. I'm like, oh, that's cool. But why aren't they doing it again?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I want to, speaking of like freaky stuff, we finish Ahsoka's lessons with something that is very symbolic in religion and Christianity. There's almost a like a literal baptism of Ahsoka when she starts to submerge herself in the water, and obviously her journey is done. She's found by the crew of the Ghost, and she's recovered from the water. But what did you guys think of that? I mean, knowing George Lucas's love of religion and humanities and the lore that we have, our history. Again, I like when they bring stuff like that in, and later on in the episode, obviously she jumps into the mouth of a whale, and that's the same thing. But what do you guys think of the baptism parallel, the rebirth of Ahsoka? And obviously she's wearing all white, after post recovery. But what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I liked it. It falls in line with old school Star Wars, because the Force, as George Lucas himself said, is an amalgamation of most major religions. Obviously, no attachments is going back to Catholicism. There's Buddhist principles. There's Jewish principles. There's Islamic principles. So if you really do a deep dive, there's an amalgamation of everything. So I think it falls in line, and it's really getting back to its roots with a scene like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, so personally, I'm a Christian. I love seeing this kind of stuff on screen. I love seeing these parallels, and it also parallels in universe with itself, with what we got to see a lot of in The Mandalorian season 3 and all of that baptismal symbolism. And so they're going really hard on the baptismal symbolism. And I think what I was most excited about, you had mentioned, was also the whale. I thought that getting into the belly of the whale is not only Christian symbolism, it's also part of the hero's journey. When you read about that, that's one of the penultimate parts one of the linchpin parts of the hero's journey. It's beginning a new section of it is getting into the belly of the whale. And so I thought this whole episode was rife with symbolism. And I think that's what you get when you get Dave as a director. I think that Dave as a writer is a little different than Dave as a director.
I'm a terrible Catholic. I didn't even pick up on the whale.
It was because it's a space whale. It distracted you.
No, the whole rebirth thing was really cool. I don't really have anything to add to it. There's forgiveness also. Ahsoka forgiven Anakin for what he did. And,
sure.
I mean, because the last time she saw him, they had parted ways. It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, the Star Wars is full of redemption and forgiveness, and I think that obviously also has its roots in religion. I think people are. I think a while ago I was having a discussion with somebody. People are really eager to jump down other people's throats about how can Darth Vader be redeemed if he did all these terrible things, and well, that religion is like that. You can be redeemed if you have repentance in your heart, et cetera, et cetera. So that is part of I feel the Star Wars lore that has been introduced to us.
Absolutely, Ro.
Yeah.
We talked about this a lot on our podcast because I've seen a lot of people complain about the line where Anakin seems to dismiss his deeds as Darth Vader. The guy is dead. He's not mortal anymore. He is immortal. There's no way for him to atone for this. There's no way to put him on trial. And Star Wars is about second chances and forgiveness and repentance, like you mentioned. And so I was very frustrated to see people not connecting those dots. And there's no reason for Anakin to, now, if he was alive, of course he needs to be held accountable, but he's dead. There's no reason for people to not move beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got one more thing on my notes here. Mon Mothma appears to the Ghost Crew, and really it's about time they talked about stripping Hera's command because she's been abusing her powers. What do you guys think?
I mean, what else would you expect from one of the lead characters in a show called Rebels? I mean, yeah, I don't know if she'll be stripped of her command because, as we heard, Leia was name dropped by Carson, so I think Leia might prevent that. She deserves it, directly disobeying orders. I mean, that's not something, unless you're like General Sherman in the Civil War, that's not necessarily something that you're supposed to do. So yeah, she definitely deserves to be stripped of her command.
Once a rebel, always a rebel. Absolutely right, Solo Girl.
I think
what rebels do.
I think we're going to visit this. I think we're going to visit this Hera thing probably at the end of this season, maybe the beginning of next season or the beginning of Dave's movie, because I think it's playing an almost identical parallel to the end of the Heir to the Empire book, the beginning of the Dark Force Rising book written by Timothy Zahn in the early 90s, where the character Borsk Falia accuses Admiral Akbar of treason. And our characters have to spend basically the first third of the book dealing with internal New Republic politics. I think Kazuda Xiono is set up to play that Borsk Falia kind of character. Or not Kazuda Xiono, I'm sorry. His father, Xiono, whatever his name is.
Right.
And Senator Xiono. And that his clashing with Hera is going to come to a point right there when they get back from the new galaxy. They're having to contend with Thrawn being back and also having to contend with this internal conflict in the New Republic government.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Hera is Akbar, Xiono's Thalia, and that'll probably be season 2 stuff going on. And you like Mon Mothma, it kind of stinks that she's so captivated by this committee that she's having to deal with. But that's the Republic government. They want to disarm, and the First Order was able to weave their way in on things.
Right.
It's a shame, but that's the story we got. I mean, shame in a sense of the galaxy, but I enjoy the story quite a lot.
Sounds good. What else? Any other final thoughts on this episode? I want to go around the room and maybe if anybody has any predictions on episode 6. This is going to be crazy. I do feel like they're finally in episode 5, I thought they were going to actually jump to the other galaxy in 4, but they seem to be like stretching it a lot. But I'm glad, I'm glad we got some Anakin stuff in 5. I think it was worth, kind of spending some time there. And like I said earlier, man, I wish there was more scenes of Anakin and Ahsoka, because those were really great. And especially Ariana Goldblatt that did an amazing job with young Ahsoka and she handled herself quite well against Hayden Christensen.
Yeah, I agree with that. To answer your question on predictions, I have to say that Collin knows this on our podcast. Every single week, I've been like, "Oh yeah, Thrawn's in the next episode." So I'm gonna stay consistent, and I'm gonna say Thrawn's in the next episode.
Even a broken clock, right?
Exactly. And even a lost Ewok finds a nut once
Once in a while. Yeah.
Butchered that. But
or a stormtrooper to eat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing I'll predict is I think that the bad guys are going to end up exactly where they want to be. They're going to end up in Peridia. And I think based on the credits at the end of the show, we see those things being traced across the star maps.
Yeah.
That Ahsoka and Huyang are going to end up at one of the planets right before Peridia, and they're going to have to move from that planet to the next one. Because just being in the next galaxy does not mean you're going to find Ezra and Thrawn. I don't think that you're just going to run into them on the hyperlanes.
Right. Dave Richards has a question that people have been asking. What if the other galaxy is ours? And I will say, hell's to the no. I don't want any Avengers teaming up with any stormtroopers anytime soon. So,
although they should bring Snake Plissken back to fight Han Solo.
I thought he was dead.
Yeah.
But I have seen that little theory floating around. But I do not want the Star Wars galaxy to be in our galaxy, because that would be kind of weird.
The Parks and Rec prediction can't come true. It can't come true.
I forgot about that rant.
Yeah,
Talk about A-list superheroes like Moon Knight.
Yeah.
I think in the next episode is just going to be a travel episode where we learn mostly background about where Baylan and Shin Hati came from. So.
Yeah, I love those characters. They're probably my favorite new characters of the show. Can't wait to learn more. And Baylan has such gravitas. The actor that plays him has such weight to him, and I really looking forward to seeing him more, learning more about him and Shin. Shin, call me. Let's go. Let's have some
Hey,
coffee.
that's my future ex-wife, man.
Right. Yeah. So we are episode 5. This series is how many? 8 episodes?
8 episodes.
Yeah.
So we are more than halfway through. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Looking forward to more Ahsoka. And it's
Oh, can I get my take?
Yeah. Real fast, getting into diving into the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka or any new Star Wars. I'm always back here because I'm really afraid that we're going to get another Book of Boba Fett. And I didn't like Book of Boba Fett.
No.
And I've said this on the show before, after Andor, I feel Andor was top tier Star Wars, top tier anything really. I always said to myself that going back to regular Star Wars was going to be very difficult because of the quality that Andor showed us that they can do. I'm really interested in the story here in Ahsoka. I really want to continue and see where it goes. And I think overall I'm happy, and not as happy as I was for Andor every episode, but this has a lot of fun, a lot of eye candy, a lot of shiny things to keep me going. So let's keep it going. Ambrose, what were you going to say?
Oh, you asked about predictions and the take on the episode. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to give my quick 2 cents. The take on the episode from top to bottom, the episode was great. Funnily enough, the most emotional scene was Huyang holding Sabine's helmet.
Yeah.
And David Tennant, that couldn't be pulled off without a voice like that. Or he has the quiver in his voice when he's talking. So that
He's
started
been
the episode
fantastic.
good. And my predictions, I think the show already has a big bad, so I don't think we're going to see much of Thrawn, because clearly Elsbeth, the governor, I think I'm saying her name right, she's clearly the big bad. I think Thrawn is going to be a cliffhanger. I think we're going to see him in episode 8, and that's going to roll into the second season, and he's going to be the big bad for season 2.
Yeah.
That's my prediction.
Yeah. Danny's got another great point, which I've also seen I think I saw yours first, Danny, but then after I read your take, I saw everybody jumping on the bandwagon. Was the Purgle scene the one with Grogu witnessed in Mando? That would be a really cool connection.
Yeah, and it'd give us a little bit of info on when this is actually happening, since we have no idea.
Yeah. So they're going this way, the Purgle's going that way. Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful discussion, gentlemen and folks in the chat. I want to thank everyone. Any final thoughts before we say good night?
I'd love everyone's take real quick on what is the world between worlds? Is it Force Ghost Heaven? Is it where everything exists? The Bendu, the Purgil, or not the Purgil, but the Bendu, the Mortis gods, everything we've seen that's weird in the Force is just between these realms? Or what do you really think it is? Because I'm on the track that it's Force Ghost Heaven. This is where the priestesses from the Clone Wars are. This is where Bendu is. This is how he travels places. And I think Dave's interviews where he says Ezra picked up his lightsaber crystal in the world between worlds, he just didn't know it yet, lends itself to that.
I think it's another tie because the show is so tied into religion, or the franchise is so tied into religion. I think it's tapping into Native American customs, and it's kind of like a place for a vision quest. Because, I mean, you can't have them eat peyote. I don't think that would be a good thing for television.
Boba Fett
so, oh yeah, he did.
Boba Fett did it. Boba Fett went to the world between worlds to get that. To get that
so I think it's like tying into Native American customs, and it's kind of like a place for a vision quest. Because if you really look at it, that's what the world between worlds is.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's a convergence of space-time, to take Einstein's theme to light here. But, retroactively, I'd like to think that, Yoda was telling us about the world between worlds in 1980 in The Empire Strikes Back, when he says, through the Force, things you will see, friends long gone. It's a convergence, really, of everything that's happening in the known galaxy through the Force. I think this might be a vessel for Force users to tap into a heightened awareness, whether you're present in the world between worlds or are able to access information in the world between worlds. I think this is a place where Jedi are able to do that.
Is the cave on Dagobah a portal to the world between worlds? It
could have been, yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I think after seeing this episode, I've come to that conclusion.
Yeah. And there's a comic book, Collin, if you're familiar with it. I think it's Vader 25. I know Vader has had a lot of series lately, but it's who's the writer and artist. It's my old brain is failing me now. But there's a really interesting sequence in Vader 25, Vader number 25, where you actually see the Dagobah battle, but from Darth Vader's point of view on this side. And then you see kind of like a fuzzy Luke in his Bespin outfit in the tree, and you don't explain it. Nobody explains it, but Vader realizes that I think that's my son. And it's clearly him with the outfit that he's wearing on Dagobah. So it's interesting. Yeah. And I love how, the creatives have been able to kind of, insert different eras of Star Wars. And Dave Filoni, I think, is good at that. He's been doing that for a while now.
Well, also on Dagobah, didn't Luke have kind of a world between worlds moment when Vader?
That's what we're talking about. Yeah, the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
oh, absolutely. All right. Sorry, I completely went over my head. I apologize.
No. Yeah, but absolutely. So again, I want to thank everybody in the chat for joining us tonight on ScarifLive. It has been wonderful to see all these wonderful faces in the chat discussing and contributing. But I want to give everybody a chance to say where people can find them. And let's start with Carter.
Well, you can find us at SW_station on Twitter and StarWars.station on Instagram. We're on YouTube. We got a Facebook group, Star Wars Station Cantina. We got a Discord. You can find those links normally in our podcast feed. And we're also wherever you listen to podcasts. And so Apple, Spotify, look up Star Wars Station.
Excellent. Collin?
Yeah, I don't really do any much personal social media, so it's all what he said. I mean, I got a Warhammer page. I do Warhammer 40K also at Warhammer.station pretty much everywhere. So
Cool.
little plug there. Thank you.
Excellent. And Ambrose is geeky. What are you geeky about?
Everything.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I'm writing. You can go to geeknewsnow.net, and me and a bunch of other great writers are putting content out. We're trying to crank it out. We're a small staff, but I've been covering the strike, and it's getting crazy. It's getting crazier every day, it seems. So I'm going to have an article probably out on Monday, because every time I go to submit it, something new happens and I have to revise the story.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a pain, but it's also, I chose to cover it. So you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is GeekNNAmbrose. And you can catch us on our new YouTube channel. We redid our YouTube channel. We are youtube.com/geeknewsnowofficial. I'm doing double duty tonight. I will be on there at 10 doing the Geek News Gauntlet, where we go over all the week's news. So there I go.
Excellent, my friend. Thank you again for joining us on ScarifLive. I am Ro from the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast, a proud founding member of the Red 5 Network. You can check the rest of the Red 5 Network at bio.link/Red5. You'll find we got 37 YouTube and audio podcasts. I'm sure you'll find something for you, including these guys, WSTR, Galactic Public Access, my fellow Chicago podcasters here in town. Next week, I wanted to drop 2 episodes last Thursday, but time kept on slipping into the future, and I couldn't get around to it. So this Thursday, I'm releasing a top 5 movie characters of all time with my friend Nick from Nick Flicks podcast. If you love talking movies of all sorts, check out that account, Nick Flicks podcast. Make sure Nick Flicks is in the queue, baby.
Is he on YouTube? Because I wanted to catch that episode.
No, this is he's audio only.
Okay, so I have to go on a podcast for that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So he reminded everybody he did a Batman episode, and today was National Batman Day. So for you Dark Knight lovers, check that one out. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Again, the chat was wonderful. Thank you very much for participating, and thank the little friend back there, Collin, for sitting and watching us geek out on cool Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, that's Charles. Thank you. So thank you, Charles.
Got a little Padawan, huh?
There you go. Excellent. We'll talk soon. Until next time, that's the Scuttlebutt. Talk to you guys later.